Okay, I'm going to talk about birds of prey. We had in Star Trek Romulan birds of prey, and the Romulans sold some birds of prey to the Klingons. They're warships. Why do we want to talk about extraterrestrial warships? Well, if you want something done, nothing gets people's attention faster than if a military aircraft starts showing up in your neighborhood, especially one that's superior to yours. In other words, it's time for the extraterrestrials to arrive on planet Earth and to make a demonstration of what they got. Here's my little extraterrestrial hat. And the demonstration that we want is I want them to take over all the news media. I want them to take over the mainstream news media, kick out all the existing reporters, and we're going to call all the channels on every channel available and on Netflix. We're going to strip Netflix of all the existing movies, and we're going to put up new information to educate the world on the truth. And it should be pretty trivial. Here's a little float plane. If I had a little float plane, where would I go? Well, for a joyride, I suppose. Here I am back to my warbird. What else do I want to do? Well, we're going to have to make major changes on the planet. And the major changes are pretty much we've got to re-educate the population because they've been so brainwashed, they won't deprogram themselves. So they're going to have training on truth. What is the truth? Well, the truth is supernatural. Why don't we see supernatural? Because we're brainwashed not to believe it's possible. So we're going to need some amazing tricks of super high technology, and then maybe some demonstrations of some people who don't need technology to do incredible things. Is it possible? Well, it's going to be difficult because I'm thinking of an old film that I saw on YouTube that since has disappeared. But it was a Tibetan monk or yogi who was on the top of one mountain in Tibet, and he teleported to the neighboring mountaintop. And it was shot on old, probably 35 millimeter film in maybe the 1930s. When I first looked at that, I said, well, it sounds like this one had these Siddhi abilities, S-I-D-D-H-I, which are spiritual superpowers, and that's how he did it. But upon reflection, this could have been a made-up video. disinformation. The video wasn't that good. I mean, it wasn't so you could really see. It just was sort of out of focus, and it was shot from a long distance away. So was it verifiable proof that this person teleported? No. It was very interesting, and I wish, that the video was better. It wasn't good enough. Was it good enough to convince me that he moved? No. I mean, even back in the days of 35 millimeter film, Hollywood had lots of special effects that they could do. This didn't look Hollywood. This looked like an amateur thing from the 1930s. But it could have been made to look like it was from the 1930s. They could have found old equipment or just, doctored it up. And there's always the possibility that maybe the person did teleport, which is how it's much easier to do these Hollywood special effects than actually teleport someone. But I did hear, it was not that new of a report, of talk that scientists have been able to teleport small, tiny things. So it seems like it's potentially something that could be done, not in time the next 1,000 years. But, extraterrestrials might have the ability to have a transporter beam, like in Star Trek. Or are we being fooled, and do our governments have these abilities? Well, there's always strange, really far out stories that I hear and read about by the usual suspects. That is, people who specialize in UFOs. What technologies are really available to us? And what can we really do with our built-in technology if we weren't brainwashed into believing that it was all hocus pocus and impossible? There's a crying need for people who are very curious to make more videos like mine, because the more of a stink that we cause, the more likely that they're going to throw us a bone, in other words. I mean, even the US military in the past year has released some video of what they say was one of their planes filming a UFO. And the video is incredibly shitty. Incredibly shitty. I mean, look how good the video is that you're watching. And this is a civilian camera on a smartphone. And you look at that US Navy, I think it was US Navy, release of UFO, and you look at the quality of that video, and it was like 1950s quality video. Piss poor. It wasn't even in color. Maybe they were using infrared or something. I don't know, but it is crappy. So I don't think it's very good. And if that's as good as we're going to get from the US military, then it's time that we get some better information. Because they're dragging their feet. They don't want to tell us what they really know. And most of us are too busy watching stupid films on Netflix to pressure them. And am I applying pressure? Yes, I am, believe it or not. Because when I ask these questions come live in consciousness. And somehow, these questions must be answered. You ask a question, ask and it is given. So we must be given some information. Sometimes they do give it. I read a story about a judge ordering the U.S. government to release some information. And what they did is they found an isolated little town in Florida, and they ran the report on this Florida local station one place, and they said, well, we fulfilled the obligations that the court made us do. And then that was the end of it. So they're very sneaky, and they're not playing fair pool. So once again, we're going to have to get rid of all of these people who won't play fair with us because we deserve better.